Welcome to the REHolistic Physio podcast. Here we're going to try and find out the whys in order to work on the hows. Everything that is covered on the podcast is based on current evidence and up-to-date information on each topic. Please seek advice from your GP or a healthcare professional before carrying out any of the advice that you hear on the podcast. Well, hello. Today we have Rich from Revive and Thrive. How are you, Rich?
Good morning. Not too bad, thank you.
Good. Thanks for joining me this morning.
No problem.
We've got a very good, interesting topic of conversation today. I think a lot of people will benefit from, and we're going to talk about burnout today, aren't we? I asked you on because I know I've seen you floating around on Instagram.
Very new to us all.
Well, you know what, we all are, so don't worry, we're all going to start somewhere, aren't we? And I just want you to tell me a bit about yourself, actually, Rich.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. So, my name's Rich, and first and foremost, who am I? So I'm a dad of two. I've got a 6-year-old son and a 1-year-old daughter. I'm into my running. I'm into playing football. I love getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning when everyone else is still in bed and going downstairs and doing a bit of reading and having a cup of tea. And that's something I'm really passionate about doing because that is my time for myself. But yeah, I'm very family orientated. I spend a lot of time, visiting parents and family with the kids and things like that. And I have a passion for well-being, and purely based on that. And as a hobby, like you said, I've also started my own Instagram account, my own podcast, which focuses around well-being and more specifically burnout and what burnout is and how we can prevent that. And I always think it's important first that we share things about ourselves when people ask us to introduce ourselves, because sometimes what we automatically do when someone asks us to introduce ourselves is we tell everyone what our job is, what our role is. So I always like to start with giving a little bit of information about myself. Professionally, I am a mental health nurse by background. So for the first 6 or 7 years of my career, I worked as an inpatient mental health practitioner, looking after elderly individuals going through a mental health crisis and therefore needed admission to hospital. But more recently, and what's probably accelerated my passion for well-being, and particularly around the topic of burnout, is for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been the service lead for the Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent Health and Social Care Staff Wellbeing Service. So that is, looking after staff who are struggling with, work-related or home-related, often both related things, and going through difficult times. So yeah, that's me. That's me. A bit about me and a bit about my profession as well.
And I love the fact that you get up at 6 a.m. I did start doing that, Rich. I promise.
It's maintaining it, isn't it?
Doing some. I know it's trying. I think sometimes when you've just got a busy life, as you say, it's important to focus on yourself and do things for yourself. But I think a lot of people will find the same, don't they? That it's getting dark now. I don't know how you get up that early. What do you do? Tell us what you do to get up there.
I feel like the darkness has actually helped, because I don't know, there's something about that waking up. And well, one of the first things I do is I try to make sure I go to bed at the same time. So usually, I mean, as you will know, with having kids, it's non-stop, isn't it? You get up, you sort out school and nursery and what have you. You then start work, you then work all day, you finish work, and it's straight back into getting them from school, or parents taking them swimming or football or dancing and all those classes that they do. So by the end of the day, we're knackered anyway. So we were always in bed by about 10 o'clock. I was sleeping till 7 or 8, and then getting up when the kids do and straight back into it. I thought, if I'm going to bed at 10 o'clock, I don't need all that sleep. So I was setting my alarm at 6, and as soon as it went off, but I absolutely loved the first morning. I did it, went downstairs, everyone else was in bed, it was dark, so I put the lamp on, got the little blanket and a cup of tea, and I sat there reading. And it was like, an hour, an hour and a half, just that time to yourself. And after I did that, it's that acknowledging that this has been really useful to me. I like the time to myself, so I'm going to make this a habit. So for the next 2 or 3 days, set the alarm, get up. Whereas now, I still have my alarm, but I usually wake up about 10 minutes before. So I'm naturally getting into that rhythm. So it's like any habit, isn't it? It's the starting the habit, which is the hard part. But if you can just be consistent with it, it becomes a habit, and it does get easier, doesn't it? I'm sure there's many people probably listening thinking there's no chance I'm getting up at 6 if I can sleep till 8 o'clock.
Just got to go to bed early, like you say. I was reading something the other day. I can't remember who it was now. And she said she has started to go to bed early because early is for people that are in their 20s, early 30s. You know, late nights, you know, going out and doing all that late. Which is true, isn't it? You get to the point where you're so tired that you actually make excuses to stay indoors and have time indoors with people instead, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we can get in the habit of as well sometimes is because when you do have busy lives like that, so work and then kids and to go to bed,
Yeah.
The way of getting that time to ourselves is we sit and put the telly and we'll put Netflix on or something and we'll watch 2 or 3 episodes and before you know it, it's 12 o'clock and you're going to bed
Yeah.
late and then you're sleeping till late. So I didn't want to get into that sort of
Bad
staying
habit.
up late, staying
Yeah.
up longer when I'm absolutely shattered anyway. I thought just go to
Yeah.
bed, then have that time in the morning. Like I say, I'm more productive at that time I find rather than at night time. You've got nothing left to give, have you?
Oh,
You're
you just
just in
haven't,
front
no.
of the
No,
telly. Yeah,
blanked, blanked
yeah,
out, probably asleep anyway, actually, to be fair. A lot of the time I end up closing my eyes
yeah.
while I'm on the couch. But anyway, great introduction there, Rich. Thanks a lot. So we're going to talk about burnout, like we say. I'm really sorry, anyone that's actually listening to this podcast. I've got to move the curtain because it's I've got a lot of light coming in the window. I'm not going to complain about the light, however, but I can't actually see the screen. So we were talking about burnout. So really, when I started looking into it and I asked you to come on and did my own research, I didn't actually realise it was classed as a syndrome, to be fair. And most of when I was looking on a couple of the websites, it said it's not classified as a medical or mental health condition, however, but it's a collection of symptoms that cause physical or mental overwhelm. Is that how you sort of describe it? Because it's different to stress, isn't it? Stress is like more of a short term.
Yeah.
Burnout's more of a long term, has a lot of more sort of effects on the mental, physical, and emotional side of things. Is that correct from your point of view, would you say?
Yeah, so it's a recognised illness now,
Yeah.
burnout, but also the way you would describe burnout, it's when it's gone beyond stress. So it is
Yeah.
that prolonged feeling of excessive stress over a period of time, and it's when things go beyond that. So, at the point of burnout, that's when you've got, you've lost all energy, enthusiasm, motivation, productivity's gone out the window. It's when you've been trying to meet those constant demands for so long that we've just now become completely overwhelmed, completely drained, and everything has just become too much. Even the small basic tasks that you'd usually find quite easy even become too difficult. So yeah, burnout, to put simply, is when things have gone beyond stress and we've managed stress for way longer than our bodies and minds are used to doing.
Okay. And in terms of sort of in Mental Health UK, burnout report for 2024, it based it on 2,060 adults, and it said that it found 91% of UK adults experienced high or extreme levels of pressure in the past 1 year. It led to 1 in 5, so 20% of people needing to take time off work. Now that's huge, isn't it?
I'd argue a lot more than that. 20%
Yeah.
need to take time off work, but only 20% will,
Yeah.
because one of the things about burnout is we try our hardest to battle through, and a lot of it is around that stigma, around that fear of failure, looking like we've failed, that guilt and shame of not being able to cope. So
Yeah.
we push through and we push through, and then you say 90% of people, which is true, experience that extreme stress. Either those 90% have then had to find ways to manage that stress to
Yeah.
not get to the point of burnout, or you've got a large number of people not in those statistics that are burnt out but are still trying
Right.
to keep going.
And that's scary, isn't it? Because the end result of that, as we were doing a few weeks ago, we were talking about sort of male mental health in particular, and just saying the increase in either mental health problems or suicide in men, the male population, is huge is increasing in the UK.
And I think, yeah, especially with men, we're profoundly known for for not talking about our feelings, for not opening up, and that I think the tide is turning a little bit. I think there's lots of men's health groups now, isn't there, that are out there encouraging men to talk. I do think that the tide is turning, but I also think we're becoming it's not just men, but talking about men in this situation,
Yeah.
you think about burnout is predominantly work related. Men, as a man, if you feel that you aren't performing at work and that you're struggling and it's that those feelings of inadequacy, feelings that you're letting not yourself down but your family down, those guilt, when that guilt and shame starts to kick in, that's a really dark place to be, and you don't want to talk about it out of fear of, or I think one of the things is when you talk about something, it then becomes real as well.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't talk about it, you're still dealing with that yourself, and you try and do
Right.
something about it. And you
Yeah.
couple all that stress at work, but then think about cost of living crisis. So obviously inflation and rising energy costs, and not be as a man, we think we're providers, and we should be able to provide. That's the traditional view, isn't it? And with cost of
Yeah.
living crisis, the impact of COVID still, that those increased workloads, it just piles up, and I do think that does impact on those statistics, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we talked about men there, but obviously women as well. There's these days there are more and more women that going out to work. Either they're forced out to work because of the cost of living and things like that, or there's just more pressures of normal life as well on everyone. I think generally, isn't there? And we go at such a fast pace. Nobody particularly stops and reflects that well. That I find, what they're doing, what they should take on, how much they should take on, how to distribute all of that. Really, you just feel like you got to kind of get on and just keep going. And I think there's always the concern that then if you don't perform, or you express that you can't perform that well and you need to tailor your work back or whatever, or take something away from your day-to-day life, then you failed, or that someone will replace you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just to mention, like I say, we talked about men and women. It comes the whole other that complexity. So if you think traditionally, historically, the man would go to work, the woman would stay at home and look after the kids. Now that has changed, hasn't it? We've come a long way, and women go to work because they want to go to work, they want careers, and that's absolutely right, and rightfully so. But also, if you have someone who does want to stay at home and look after their kids, and be with the kids, and that's absolutely fine as well.
Yeah.
They can't really do that anymore because of how expensive everything is. One income isn't enough. So there's a certain group of women that will also be forced to go to work because they have to. But the thing, and society's done that, and how much everything costs now. But for those people who, but then there's still an expectation on, and I know that's changed as well, but there's still an expectation on women that they take over a lot of the parenting roles. So, you have a lot of women who get up at 6 a.m. And do all the things for the kids. They then go to work and have these careers. I still don't think it's understood, and there's cultures at work that don't respect the work-life balance. They then come home and it's washing, it's cooking, it's clean, and they still take on those roles, those traditional historic roles. So women and particularly mothers, it's a constant shift from the moment they get up to the moment they go to bed, and that's a huge factor of burnout as well.
And that's why I like the fact when you said about getting up at 6 a.m. And I think it is. I think it's important, and I always express that people need to never feel ashamed to say, I need time for myself. And I have a mum friend that's just had her first child. He's a year old now, but she said to me, it's a lot. It's a lot. I'm a teacher. She's a teacher as well. She's gone back to work. And I just said, find that one thing that you're selfish about. Every week you say, I'm going to do that, or I sit in the other room and I do my artwork, or whatever it is that you like doing. I have that hour. I'm closing that door. I'm going out for my walk. My time. I'm gone. You've got to be sort of have that, and your hour in the morning. I think that's exactly that's perfect. When you said that, I thought that is exactly what everyone needs to hear. That you, as a busy dad as well, doing this, promoting mental health issues, being a real advocate for this, you take that time.
Yeah, and I think that because what we tend to do when things become really difficult, and we see burnout as work related, but it's it used to be, it was first coined for the health profession, but it goes across all different professions now, and it incorporates everything that we have going on at home as well. I do think when we're burnt out, what we do without realizing is we think the answer is double downing to double down on all the stressors, all the work-related stressors that are causing us to feel burnt out. Because if we work harder, work more smarter, we extend our working hours, because things will eventually get easier. But what we do is we sacrifice the things that we enjoy doing, the things that are hobbies, because we don't see ourselves as priority. But these are the things that keep us well. So, they're spending time with your partner, spending time with your kids,
Yeah.
if you exercise, whether it's running, swimming, walking, dancing, whatever it might
Yeah.
be, sort of eating well, all those things that we
Yeah.
sacrifice to try and get on
Yeah.
top of the workload. We don't realize in the moment that all we're doing is making things
No,
worse. You have to prioritize yourself. It's
you
that thing
do.
that you can't pour from an empty jug. And if you want to be your whole self at work and be a good partner and a good parent, you have to put yourself first. It isn't selfish.
No.
It's a complete priority. If you then want to be able to go and
Yeah.
do the, and perform in other areas, you have to put yourself first and carve time out for yourself first and
Yeah.
foremost. That's the key message. Yeah.
Brilliant. No, that is exactly, I just think it's really important, but not enough people do it because they throw themselves into everyone else and
Mm,
put all of their energy into everyone else and making everyone happy. But if you're not happy yourself, then you can't do your
mm,
best for everyone else.
yeah.
It's so hard, isn't it? Because as well, I think we keep going back to that being a parent, but a lot of it, I think, changes when you do become a parent because you love other people so much that you just want them to be healthy and well. And then you
Mm,
do kind of forget yourself. And that happens a lot. I mean, let's face it, it happens to most people, doesn't it?
yeah.
And then, yeah, you just start, before you had kids, you start keep working at the same level as before you had kids, but you just can't. You just
Yeah.
can't. It's impossible. You can't do it. You
No,
can't do it.
I think, like you say, with kids, they're dependent on you, aren't they? So they almost have to be top of the list. But I think we so easily get into that habit of making sure the kids are all sorted first, which is
Yeah.
great. But then we start, we take that into other elements of, like say, at work and like you said it, we put everybody and everything else first before our own needs. I don't think we intentionally do it or we realize that we're doing it. So I think,
Yeah, I think you're right.
podcasts like this, or just doing some, pausing and reflecting about what is
Yeah.
going on in your life and where are
Yeah.
your priorities, is really important. Because if you take the time, because when you're on that hamster wheel, you're just going and going and going. You
Yeah.
don't stop to think what's going on here, but pausing and reflecting on your situation and thinking, hang on a minute, yeah, I'm not. What am I doing for me to keep me well? All I'm doing
Yeah.
is performing for everybody else, and I just
Yes.
feel stressed, overwhelmed, and
Overwhelmed.
effectively burnt out. And you've got to be able to nip that in the bud and think, actually, I need to make some changes now. It's huge, and
Yeah.
will stop you. Because if you hit burnout, it's a recognized illness. It's a lot more serious, I think, than people think. There's
Oh,
that
yeah,
dark place,
absolutely.
that you're in a real dark place. And people who've been through burnout describe it as having to literally find themselves all over again. And
Yeah.
people have had around 6 months off work to do
Yeah.
that, just because of how damaging it can be. So
Yeah.
recognizing when you are in a really stressful situation and doing something about it before it gets to that point is, it'll be the best thing
Really.
you ever do, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And saying no. Learn to say no
Yes, that's a
is my
huge
one
one.
tip. There's times now where I feel like I never used to say no. I'm a very much a yes person. And it
Yeah,
is just recently, I think people have kind of actually gone, good for you. Because I've said, no, I can't do that actually. Or no, I've realized I'm not going to do that. And, before I'd have taken on all these things and just gone with it just because
yeah,
I'm one of those overachievers, as we discussed
yeah,
before, that likes to just make sure everyone's happy and that I'm doing my best. And then you just end up going, I just can't. Then
yeah,
the anxiety becomes real, doesn't it? You realize how much you've taken on and just the pressure. And then,
yeah. But we naturally, like, so many people should be able to relate to. We're people pleasers. We
Mhm.
the thought of upsetting somebody else
Yeah.
is that intense that we're more willing to not do that at the detriment of ourselves. So we'll think, I really can't do that because I'm really busy already. Things are really
Yeah.
difficult. I'm gonna have to do that at night time when I should be spending time with family.
Yeah.
But I don't want to upset them by saying no. So you say yes, and then you deal with it,
Yeah.
and you take that on. And I always remember an example. There's a healthcare support work on the first job that I did, and she was absolutely amazing. She did everything. Healthcare support workers now, they're really skilled.
Yeah.
They don't just make beds and do and
No.
sort meals
God,
out for
no.
the patients.
Yeah.
They take bloods, they take the vital signs. They do. That's just off the top of my head. They do a lot more.
Yeah.
And this particular healthcare, she just get straight away. She was on it. She was doing everything that needed to be done. And and there was other healthcares that were busy, doing their thing. But this particular one was just so. And we were saying, lots of praise. She's amazing. But then what you end up doing is, I'll give it to this healthcare because she'll do it. she'll get
You
it
do.
done. And
You
then
overload them.
so without realizing, you end up overloading them. And I
Yeah.
remember a point where, and I just noticed that I asked her to do something and she said no. And I looked at her and I was like, fair play. And I was like,
Yeah.
I remember feeling
Was
like quite proud that, and I was like, and she did, and she started saying that she did what she could do. And then she
yeah.
said, I haven't got capacity for anything else. And this was 6 years ago before I even got into all
Yeah.
this. And it sticks with me that she was somebody that thought, I can't keep doing this for everything for everybody else and people pleasing
Yeah.
and saying yes to everything. And obviously had a switch. So yeah, that sort of really stuck with me. But it's important. But one of the best things you can do is say no. But and it'll be
Yeah.
hard at first. You'll feel uncomfortable. The people might not be used to saying no, so they might show some negative response to say, what do you mean? But trust me, if you can get used to saying no when you need to, it's not saying no to absolutely everything. Obviously,
No.
if you went into work and said no to
Yeah.
everything, they're gonna.
Yeah. I'm not
But you
doing
know,
that.
but if you say, I'm really at capacity, or you can
Yeah.
even say,
Yeah.
I'm at full capacity at the moment.
Yeah.
If it can wait till next week, then come back to me, or something like that. But just if you get used to doing that, you will see just how much that starts to
Yeah.
free you up, and people start to respect your boundaries then, because boundaries
Absolutely.
is a huge factor in terms of preventing burnout as well.
And when it comes to burnout, so we said, how can you recognize the start of the beginning of, because I'm guessing it's slightly different to stress, or is it sort of you start getting stressed and anxious and whatever, and it just builds up from there? Do you know what I mean? How do you tend to say to people to sort of what the signs to look for initially?
So it's really common for people who end up burnt out, even people who've worked in mental health or have a good understanding of
Yeah.
well-being, when you are in the thick of it, you just don't realize just what is happening. And only when you become burnt out and you recover and you look back
Oh,
and you think, all the signs were there, all the signs were there. Why did I not notice them? So it is important if you can really start to
yeah.
recognize the signs before you get there and start putting some of these changes in. And sorry, I keep coughing. And we always say there's sort of three common pillars to burnout, and that's exhaustion,
Yeah.
cynicism, which I'm sure a lot of people will relate to. So we say cynicism or detachment, and
Mhm.
reduced performance. So if you can notice those signs within yourself, so exhaustion isn't just physical exhaustion, so that fatigue, that
Yeah.
the not wanting to get up in the morning, the headaches, the motivation, it's the emotional symptoms. So it's that feeling of helplessness, feeling that you can't, you've got that decreased motivation, that sense
Mm.
of you start to feel like a failure, like you can't cope, imposter syndrome might kick in. Um, and then, you might notice some sort of behavior changes as well. So, we start
Mm.
to withdraw from responsibilities. We might start to isolate ourselves from our colleagues. Procrastination might start to kick in. Um, increased irritability with people, and I think that cynicism will really start to kick in as well. And it's that you just lose interest and enthusiasm for work, something that you used to feel passionate about, and you used to find, it was you almost sort of saw it as your calling. Um,
Mm.
and you start to feel negative towards your job. You might start getting annoyed with your colleagues, your
Yeah.
manager, the organization you work for as a whole. And again, that just contributes to that sense of isolation as well, and that detachment. So if you feel that you'll wake up in the morning and you just don't want to get out of bed, don't want to go to work, you no longer enjoy the work that you do, yeah, that's a real sure sign of burnout. And
Okay.
then then in terms of that reduced performance, you will notice,
Yeah.
you will know yourself that you aren't performing to the level that you would like to.
Yeah.
So it's that productivity, it's that difficulty concentrating. You're struggling to motivate yourself. I mentioned earlier when
Yeah.
basic tasks just become difficult. So you're sat there at your desk or wherever, and you've got a really busy day, you're overwhelmed by a to-do list, but you pick up your phone and you scroll through Instagram and Facebook and whatever. You're going up through the news articles on your screen, looking at BBC News and your local news and all this, and you're thinking, what am I doing? I'm so busy, but I'm
Yeah.
doing all these things.
Yeah.
So, these are just sort of
They're the
signs
sorts of signs.
to sort
Okay.
of look out for. Yeah.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. So next, I would ask then, what would you suggest people doing? Is there a starting point? Is there some, you get to the point where you just think, I'm really done with doing all of this, and
Mm.
I need to talk to someone now, or I need to talk to my work. Is there anything you would say to people, recommend
So straight
starting
away,
with?
acknowledging where you are.
Yeah.
is the main point, and think and accepting that, hang on a minute, if nothing, because if you don't change, nothing changes, and you carry on
No.
on that path. So acknowledging that you are highly stressed, overwhelmed, that cynicism's kicked in, you're detached from work, your performance is impacted, you wake up in the morning even after you've had a good 8 hours sleep and you still feel exhausted. If you recognize these signs, accepting that this is happening, being kind to yourself and thinking this is that, it's not a reflection on you. It doesn't mean that you can't
Yeah.
cope. It doesn't mean that you failed and all these things that will stop us from talking to someone about it. So acknowledging that that's happened and being kind to yourself that's happening. And if you don't do something about it now at this point, things will become even worse. And then that you say talk. So just start off by acknowledging it yourself and maybe talking to a loved one, a colleague who might, because colleagues might not have spoke about it, but if you're in that boat and it's work related, they're probably in a similar boat. If you've got a supportive manager talking about it, because you will realize when you actually talk about it and open up, you won't get the response your critical voice is telling you that you'll get. You will realize that support is there. And when you talk to people why you feel the way you do, they'll be sitting there thinking, of course you feel this way. Why are you managing all that on your own? And it could be talking to your partner, so looking at sharing more responsibilities at home. It can be reducing your workload at work. It can be prioritizing tasks. So that is the first point, that acknowledgement that something needs to change and that we're struggling. And then again,
Yeah.
I always think there's like sort of 5 key pillars that you can look at. So from when I've been doing my own sort of reading around burnout, I think you've got self-care, and that's, we've talked about that already, so I won't go too much into that, but that is prioritizing us. We have to put ourselves first. What do you love doing? What do you enjoy? And it isn't selfish, and you have to factor those things in back into your schedule. And if you say I'm too busy for that, what you're effectively saying is I'm prioritizing everything else before me, because that's the reason you're too busy, is because you're prioritizing everything else first. So that's self-care. The boundaries we've already talked about, and that learning to say no. That when you recognize that your capacity is exceeded and conflicting, and you've got all these conflicting priorities, and at some point you're going to have to stop people pleasing and you're going to have to say no. Establishing when you finish work, and acknowledging, and talk to your colleagues and your manager, and say I've got myself in some bad habits. I'm going to be logging off at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and that will be it. I won't respond to
Yeah.
emails until the next day. Setting those boundaries. So I think boundaries is a big one. Mindset. So if you think you've got a bit of a fixed mindset where we let those critical thoughts take over, and we're all only human and we're all guilty of it, but if you find that you've got more of that fixed mindset, have a look at what growth mindset is, and start trying to adapt a more growth mindset around being kinder to ourselves, speaking more positively as to ourselves, seeing challenges as opportunities for development and growth rather than setbacks that we ruminate over. So yes, that's personal care, boundaries, mindset, and then time management. So
Yeah.
I think what's important is it's not just about time management, because you could have the best time management in the world. On the planet, you could be the best time management, best at time management. But if you work in a workplace that has unrealistic and unreasonable demands,
Yes.
or it's a particularly damaging workplace cultures where, it can be quite easy to become burnt out regardless of your time management. But when we get recognizing that we're at a stage where we probably are procrastinating a lot, we are detaching from the work, and we're going to do something about it, using certain tools such as the Eisenhower matrix or time blocking. And I'm saying these slowly in case we want to look them up, or one of my favorites, which is the Pomodoro technique. Using some of these tools can really
Yeah.
help just reprioritize. It's about not being overwhelmed by to-do lists. It's thinking, what are the most important tasks, the biggest tasks, perhaps put them at the start of your day when your energy's at the highest, and get them out. Because what we do is usually we put a to-do list and we start doing the easy stuff first, thinking it'll build momentum, but it doesn't. We get to the end of the day, we feel like we've run out of energy, and the big task we just put off for another day. And
Yeah.
then the deadline's a lot looming and we become more stressed.
Yeah.
So time management's a crucial one. And
Yeah.
then finally, I'd say seek support. Use the
Yes.
support around you. Don't struggle with it on your own. Recognize that you aren't, we said at the start, 90% of people, so actually be one of them people that speak up about it, because if you speak up about it, your colleagues might speak up about it, and everyone will be able to be the big sigh of relief, because you're the
Yeah.
one that said this can't go on. So be proud, be brave that you're going to actually highlight that this can't go on anymore, and this, I'm talking more
Yeah.
work related, and connect with your colleagues, your manager, speak to your family about it, speak to your friends about it. And if it's getting to the point where things are really difficult, because there's some really difficult symptoms of burnout, such as it impacts the sleep. So we don't sleep, we overthink at night time, and then obviously that sleep impacts everything else. We can start to get some quite intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
I've spoke to people who've said that they've started to have these intrusive thoughts that the kids are going to be harmed in some way, and it's just the overwhelming stress starts to impact our mental health, and that's how difficult it can become. So if you're getting to that point of things becoming really difficult, seek sort of professional support. And by that, it can be go to the GP and speak to your GP. There might be something within your organisation, your workplace, a wellbeing initiative, where you can go and speak to somebody. So use them. Often we think we're not well, we have to be like really unwell to use them, but sometimes that these things are there to prevent us from becoming overwhelmed and burnt out. Not wait till you are burnt out, off sick, really struggling in a dark place before you actually finally access support. So see what support is around you and use that support. And they're my like sort of 5 pillars that I try and speak to people about.
I think that's really good. And I think I normally say to people, Rich, at this point, are there 3 key takeaway points from this podcast that you'd like people to take? But actually, I think those 5 key pillars are pretty much summed it up. I don't think you can narrow it down, really. I mean, I would say to people that self-care, I'm very much someone that says now and has learnt from myself in the past that self-care, number 1, you need to do something for yourself. And what you tend to find is people get angry. I used to get a bit angry if that ate into my time. That's when I'd get narky. You know what I mean? It'd be like, hang on, that's my hour to do my exercise or my dance class, and you're doing, I can't go and do it. So self-care, I definitely think is a massive one. That's one I advocate to people. Boundaries, yes, and start saying no to things that you really can't take on. That's definitely mindset massively. And like I said, the time management and the seek support, huge.
Absolutely.
But would you narrow that down, or is that 5 key points we're going to take away there, I think, today?
I think you're at the nail on the head in terms of probably the first one is just you are the most important person in your life, because if you don't look after yourself, you're not even going to be in a position to look after other people, whether it's friends, colleagues, the work, if you are in healthcare, the people you look after, or the work that you do, if you work in another field, you are the most important person in your life, and that self-care has to come first. That kindness towards yourself, that acknowledgement that things are difficult, and take away that critical voice, the feeling of failure, the feeling of shame, because all it is you have just been trying to maintain an unmaintainable level for too long, and no one should be in that position. So I think the self-care absolutely comes first, and my main message today would be, do you truly prioritize yourself? If the answer is no, that is where you start. So
thanks a lot, Rich. Been lovely to speak to you.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.